This is Fountainhead Forum 294. We're having a tribute panel to Nathaniel Branden. We hope that others will show up, and we'll see what happens there. Right now, I'm just if you could introduce yourself, please do.
Certainly. My name is Roger Bissell. I'm a professional musician and a philosopher by my hobby, and also an editor doing part-time work editing. I'm in my mid-70s. I grew up in Iowa on a farm, and then went to college and moved to Nashville to become a professional musician. And I spent a few years in California doing that, and then came back here to Nashville around 15 years ago. So I've had a very interesting career, and I've really enjoyed philosophy and psychology as well.
Well, that's good, Roger. This is a tribute panel to Nathaniel Branden. Today is Dr. Branden's 95th birthday. Can you tell us, how did you know Nathaniel Branden?
Well, I met him personally around 1999 at his home, although I had corresponded with him previously. And actually, I did have lunch with him once in the early 1990s with a group of several other people, but didn't really get to talk one-on-one with him at that time. But around 1999 to 2000, 2001, he was holding Sunday afternoon get-togethers in his home, and sometimes we'd have between 10 and 20 people there, and we talk about a range of subjects, and it was quite interesting. It was a really good experience.
Okay, thank you, Roger. We just had two of the other people join us. I guess we'll start with Molly. Molly, how are you? Tell the people out there who you are and how you knew Nathaniel Branden.
Hi. I'm Molly Seacrest. I live in Santa Fe with my husband, Steve Moses. I didn't personally know Nathaniel Branden, but I did know Ayn Rand. I went to her apartment many times.
Yeah. Okay.
I met Nathaniel Branden at conferences, but I didn't know him.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. And hello, Warren. How are you?
Hello, Chris, and hello, Roger and Molly.
Warren, could you tell us who you are and how you knew Nathaniel Branden?
Yes, I am. I've been a professor at the University Francisco Marroquín in Guatemala for 45 years. I was director of the Henry Hazlitt Center, which is a center that has the objective of teaching all the students, no matter what their career is, about economics.
Good.
And later, I was the director of the Central for Studies of Capitalism, which I still am. And besides that, I'm an architect. I used to practice, had some buildings, high rises in Guatemala. And I first knew of Nathaniel Branden through his writings in the Objectivist newsletter. That was in the late 1960s, 68, 69. And then I read his books. His first book I read was Psychology of Self-Esteem. And then I read Psychology of Romantic Love, Self-Esteem at Work, the 7 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Well, anything he wrote, I read. And when I found out that he had, I first knew whole objectivism through his course on the principles of objectivism. I did not attend personally, but got the tapes. And with a friend who also was interested in objectivism at that time, we organized sessions for people at the university, teachers at the university. And we hired a room in a hotel, and we played the tapes, which we had already played for us a year before. And when he parted ways with Ayn Rand, we didn't know who the real objective was, and we kept track to see who kept to his principles, and well, he kept to his principles. And then later I met him a at that time it was called the objectivist. No, it's now the Atlas Society, but it was called objectivist.
It was
Center.
well, first it was the Institute for Objectivist Studies, then it was the Objectivist Center, and now it is the
Yes,
Atlas Society.
at that time was the objectivist center, and we met in near Los Angeles at the university there. And he was a gentleman and very easygoing and nice to talk to him. Then later we brought him to University Francisco Marroquin to give some lectures. That was maybe 20 to 25 years ago. Time flies. He was an impressive lecturer, very calm, very analytical of the questions, and he was with Devers at that time, and we had him for some days at the university. That's how I met him.
That's great, Fred. That's great, Warren. We've also had Fred Rossum just join. Fred looks like Fred's muted, so Fred, you're muted, and I can't unmute you. So yeah, you're gonna have to figure out why you're muted. So
Down at the bottom, there are about 5 little things you can select, and the one on the left says mute. And so maybe if he can see that, then he can uncheck it.
Yeah, or he's using something that's not compatible. But yeah.
Oh.
I again, I don't know. I'm just suggesting that, but yeah, when people get on and they are muted, it usually indicates something's wrong on their end. It's possible that something else is grabbing the microphone, because the microphone can only be used by one application. So if another application has the microphone, then it can't use the microphone here. So
yeah,
sometimes leaving and coming back might be a fix.
Yep.
So anyway, well, it's good to hear from everybody. So we started off with a good story. So what can this is I'm wondering what else we can say here at this point. Roger, how do you think it's been almost it's been 10 and a half years since Dr. Branden has passed. Do you think Dr. Branden, is still is being as well read now as he was back then, or what do y'all think of this? Anybody can answer.
Sure. I don't know. I haven't looked at his Amazon sales or things like that, but I just don't know.
I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. I don't know about his sales in Amazon, but at the university, he is read. I gave a master's degree course on objectivism for several years. A couple of students were students of psychology. Now they are teaching psychology, and they are followers of Nathaniel Branden's ideas, and they make speeches and they teach about that, in contrast to the traditional Freud and Lachman theories. So at the university, he's pretty well alive, so to say.
I will say this: when they started up the Nathaniel Branden Institute in 1958, I think it was,
yes,
and he gave those lectures on basic principles of objectivism. At that time, as you know, they were given in various cities by playing the tapes. And then as technology improved and we got cassettes and then CDs and so on, people were able to buy the lectures. Around 1969 or 70, I think people could buy the LPs, and then they were cassettes and so on. I learned really well by transcribing or taking really good notes when I'm listening to something. And so many years ago, like 15 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, I transcribed all of those lectures, and then I showed them to Barbara Branden, and she said, we have to talk to Nathaniel. We have to convince him to publish these in a book. And that's what happened around 2010, 2009, 2010. Those lectures did get published, and it's called The Vision of Ayn Rand. And then it's those 20 lectures. And so now they're available for people. They're not. Yes, there you are. There you are. And my name is in there. He thanked me for my work. But yeah, I'm very proud of that project. It was well worth the hours and hours that I spent, because to me, this is history. This is the history of the objectivist movement, and it shows Dr. Branden's mind at work. As brilliant as he was, like 60, almost 70 years ago. I mean, the guy really had his brain crackled. He was amazing.
Yeah, well,
Fred, you're still muted, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Roger, how much were you involved with NBI back then? Because I don't get to talk to very many people here. Oh,
not at all. In fact, I first read Atlas Shrugged in 1966, and that was only 2 years before the Institute ended, right? I was a senior in high school, and my band director, I was a music kid, my band director said, here, I have something I want you to read. And it was an essay from the newsletter by Nathaniel Branden. It was called Benevolence versus Altruism. And she says, I want you to read this and tell me what you think. So I took it home, I read it. And, okay. So I brought it back to her, and I said, thanks for letting me read this. And she said, well, what did you think? I said, it makes sense, but I didn't, get really excited about it. She says, really? So 2 days later, she handed me a copy of Atlas Shrugged, and all weekend I stayed up a late night reading Atlas Shrugged, and all of a sudden everything clicked in. I said, now I know what that essay was all about.
Yeah, and by the way, we got a new person here. Mark Skousen is here, and for a little while Joanne was here too. But Mark Skousen is here, and I'm sorry I didn't get the invite to you sooner, Mark, but I'm really glad you're here.
My pleasure. I had a doctor's appointment and teaching at Chapman University and a few other extolling the virtues of Donald Trump for finally getting his act together and the stock market roaring back. It was a relief rally, but we'll see if it keeps going. The guy's crazy. I don't know what you guys think of Donald Trump, but I think he's nutty as a fruitcake.
Yeah.
I'm going off topic here, but Mark, haven't we had quite a few people who taught at Chapman over the years?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just trying to think of all of our.
Was Tibor there?
Yes.
Who?
Tibor McCann.
Oh yeah, Tibor McCann was there for many years. We spent some time together.
Yeah.
I've been teaching. Joanne and I have been teaching there for 10 years, and Tibor was around teaching philosophy, and we got to meet. So he was great. There's a lot of libertarians there.
Where is it?
Vernon Smith, of course, the Nobel Prize winner, is at Chapman, and Jim Doty.
Where is it?
Orange County, California.
Yeah, it's in Orange County, California. Yeah,
it's about 30 miles southeast of LA.
Yeah,
I used to live in Orange.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. I gave a lecture at Chapman in 2006 on romantic music. Not music for hot dates, but it was like, from the 1800s music.
Like Rachmaninoff, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky, Chopin, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love Chapman. Jim Doty was a PhD student under Milton Friedman. He's the one who hired me as a presidential fellow, and then the Doty Spokely Chair of Free Enterprise. And then Daniele Strupa is the new president. Actually, he's retiring this year. We have a replacement. But Daniele Strupa is very much a libertarian and has spoken at Freedom Fest a number of times. So we really, in fact, I'll tell you this, you'll be interested in knowing that I believe Chapman University is the only university with a bust of Ayn Rand on campus. You don't have that at Hillsdale or
No.
Grove City or any of those places.
No.
But in Chapman, we have one. It's right across from
Yeah.
Milton Friedman and Ronald Reagan.
That's
That's
terrific.
great.
What about the university in Guatemala City that we're in?
I don't know. I've been there a few times, but I don't think I've seen an Ayn Rand statue there. They certainly are big believers in Milton Friedman and Mises and Hayek and people like that. But Chapman is unique in that respect.
So, Mark, what was your, you've certainly known so many people over the years. What was your experience with Dr. Branden?
Nathaniel Branden was a really interesting person who actually mellowed. I have to use that word, mellowed, over time, because when I first met him, small talk was not in his vocabulary. I went up and said, well, how are you doing? The weather's great. And he basically said, I don't do small talk, and walked away. And so he was very intimidating. He was a very tough person to deal with. He was very debate. He loved debates, and he wanted to talk philosophy and deep philosophy.
Right.
But at the end of his life, we invited him as our keynote speaker at FF-294 that was the first Freedom Fest in 2002 in Las Vegas. He and Charles Murray were our keynote speakers at our banquet, and he couldn't have been more delighted, and small talk, there was no problem. And we had him there a couple of times, and he couldn't be friendlier. He didn't put on the airs that he had when he was around Ayn Rand.
Well, Mark, I even noticed a change from about 1992 or whenever the 6 pillars of self-esteem came out, and around 2000 or so, he was, like you described, kind of a little bit like looking kind of critically and so on. And then later, he was a very genial guy when he'd have the Sunday meetings up at his house. My wife and I were there one afternoon, a group of about 20 people, and Devers, his wife, was talking to my wife about, my wife had commented that, she really loved the paintings and the artworks that they had there in their house. And it was very, very tastefully and beautifully decorated. And she said, well, yes, Nathaniel has always been very generous. And he's always told me that anything that I want for the house, that's absolutely fine. And Nathaniel was standing there just quietly taking this all in, just kind of nodding. Yeah. And then he said, and I think, to me, delivery is everything, right? I mean, your timing, and I can't hope to copy it, but here's approximately how he said it. He says, yes, it has long been a belief of mine that when I die, I will be held morally accountable for all the money I did not spend.
By the way, that's cool. By the way, 6 Pillars came out in 96.
Oh, 96. Seriously?
Yeah. Because he was talking about it at the seminar in Boulder that year. If you remember, in 1996, he came to the what was the Institute for Objectivist Studies seminar, and this was the first time he'd been to any, audience of so-called objectivists since 1968.
Right.
And he was talking a lot about that book there. He had just, so it was,
Yeah, it's funny that, I teach a class called Libertarian CEOs. And one of them is BB&T Bank, now Truist Bank, and John Allison who teaches from Atlas Shrugged, and gives it out to all of his executives. And he's very Randian in his approach. So we had a discussion about I'm trying to think of the people who wrote self-discipline, about that self-discipline is much more viable than the approach that Nathaniel Branden take with what do you call it? Not self-appreciation. What's the word?
Self-esteem.
Yeah, self-esteem. Thank you. And this psychologist did lots of studies on self-esteem versus self-defense and where you self-discipline, the two variables. And he found that self-esteem was not as successful with people as the self-discipline approach. And it was a really interesting study how self-esteem has kind of lost the support in psychology and so forth. You know, the idea of giving everybody an award, whether they deserved it or not. I don't think Nathaniel Branden wanted that sort of thing. No. He was opposed to that, but I guess that's how it's been interpreted.
Right.
Well, Molly, in the University Francisco Marroquin, in the library building, which is called Ludwig von Mises Library, there is a bust of Ludwig von Mises in the lobby, but there is a room in the library that's called the Ayn Rand room. Oh, and good. There is a picture of her. And then we also have a large relief sculpture in bronze, more or less 20 by 20 feet, on the School of Business. And that's Atlas Libertas, it's the name. It's a homage to Atlas Shrugged. That's a huge piece you can find there. And then in the School of Business, there was a mural where you find Mises, Hayek, Milton Friedman, but you also find Nathaniel Branden, David Kelly, Ayn Rand, and I think Mark Skousen also.
It could be there was a T-shirt that Laissez-Faire Books had for many years of all Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman and Hayek and Mises and all of these people, and they put me on the T-shirt. So that was really pretty nice. That was about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, Warren, are you at UFM?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I've been teaching there for 45 years, and I was the director of Henry Hazlitt Center for 10 years, and then I became director of Studies of Capitalism. And I've been to Freedom Fest several times, which I enjoyed very much, yeah.
Yeah, you look familiar, and we probably met also at UFM. I've given there a number of lectures there over the years. Have not been invited, however, in the last 5 years. I don't know what's going on there, but...
I will tell them. I will tell them.
In fact, I give a talk on the minimum wage, which number of the UFM faculty attended, and afterwards, one of them came up and said, "Oh, we want you to give this lecture at UFM," and then I haven't heard anything back. But I do enjoy going down there. I know you're hosting the API meetings there in April, but I'm teaching at the same time, so I'm not going to be able to make it. But
well, that was this week. We just finished yesterday.
It was. Yeah. Oh, it was.
What was it?
So
the API meeting.
What was it?
Yeah.
Association of Private Enterprise Education.
Yeah.
And they've been around for like 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Fred, you're still
years.
Muted. Fred is still muted. He's trying to join. Oh, wait, he's unmuted. Fred, how you doing?
Good. Sorry, I don't have my camera set up.
Yeah, turn the volume down a little bit too if you can. Yeah, Fred, that's fine. Stuff happens. You're here. Anyway, or you might just be too close to the microphone. Yeah. Okay. This is Fred Rossum. Tell us who you are and how you knew Nathaniel Branden.
I didn't know him very well. I met him at Freedom Fest, and that was it. We had like a short chat, but he mentioned I enjoy his work, and that was it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you met him at Freedom Fest. What was your impression when you met him at Freedom Fest?
Well, he was. I remember he was quite. This was in 2010 maybe. I'm not sure,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously he's a celebrity, and he seemed like he was already quite old at that point, so I didn't want to take too much of his time.
Yeah, I met him at Yes, I met him at I met him at Free Minds, which was in 2009, which was somewhat of a replacement for the Objectivist Center Summer Seminars,
right?
Which was actually one of the better events I'd been to. Yeah, I really enjoyed that event. That was he was with Lee at the time. Although you could tell he was slowing down a little bit, but it was still, I think there was still that vigor there that he'd always had.
Right. That was in Las Vegas. And yeah. I remember I had the best pork chops I've ever had in my life when I was at that seminar. Not at the hotel. We went over to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and the pork chops were to die for. They were the wonderful pork chops.
They've got a good reputation, but they're not cheap.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got another person here. Good for him. Hey, Rob Sperry, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm good. How are you? It's been a while.
Yeah. So, Rob, tell us who you are and how you knew Nathaniel Branden. I think it's nice finally to see somebody on here who might actually be younger than me.
Yeah. So there, everybody here probably knows the rough events where Branden kind of disassociated himself, got kicked out, whatever, from the objectivist movement. And then after a while, he wanted to be reintroduced through David Kelly's organization, which changed its name a bunch of times, and I don't remember what it was called at the time, but they were going to have a conference, I believe, in Boulder, Colorado.
Yes.
And so he had reached out to, I believe, Josh Zader, and said, hey, I want to meet some younger people. And at the time, I was younger. I had just graduated from college. And so he gathered, I want to say about 8 of us, together at his house with Devers and God, my memory is terrible. Who is the philosophy professor at USC that was also like the first Libertarian Party?
John Hospers.
John Hospers. Yeah. So he was the editor of The Personalist.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the first academic journal I think that discussed objectivism that I know of. In any case, he was there, and like a couple other people, and so we had this kind of like very interesting gathering. And so that's kind of how I met him. And that kind of played out over maybe like a year or two where we had periodic meetings at his house.
Rob, did we meet? I went to probably half a dozen of those. That was in the big White House in the hills at Beverly Hills, right?
Then we must have met then. Yeah. I was one of those young people.
Oh yeah.
I was one that came with a wife. I was married at the time.
Me too.
So that was
Who
the one.
owned this house in Beverly Hills?
I think it was Branden's house, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Brandon's house. Oh, okay.
It was an amazing Art Deco decorated.
Right.
It was perhaps the most beautiful house I think I've been in.
It was lovely.
It was really well designed and really well decorated.
Yeah, you were all the first people I thought of. Okay, who was in that crew that used to go to Nathaniel Branden's house back in the 90s, And I said, yeah, you. And I reached out to a few of you if I could find you.
Yeah, so I think it was Andrew Breeze, Kyle Griffin, Josh Zader, someone named Farsam who has drifted away from the.
Yeah, Farsam Shadab. Yeah.
He's.
I remember him.
He's become an interesting, strange person. Eventually, someone named Melissa Miles came, but she wasn't originally there. But then
I tried to get Melissa. Yeah.
And my wife at the time, Michelle, was also there.
So I have a question. I just got an email from Larry Reed and several other people, Jennifer Grossman, so forth, on this Philadelphia Declaration. Do you know about this?
No.
No.
So apparently last year, about 30 people of the Atlas Society got together, John Aglioloro and others involved, and they have put out the Philadelphia Declaration. And I think it's just a Randian kind of statement about the 250th anniversary of our founding. I haven't read it carefully at all. It's kind of an interesting statement where there's an objectivist statement and then there's a criticism of objectivism, and it goes back and forth. It's really kind of unusual. They are interested in coming to Freedom Fest and presenting this Philadelphia Declaration, and so we're taking a look at that and see if that's something to be done. So what do you think of the? Are you all members of the Atlas Society or not?
No.
Or you're critics?
No.
You're with the Ayn Rand Institute then?
I am. Yeah.
No.
I was a founder of iOS.
I don't. Yeah.
Some
people go back and forth between the organizations, but I don't know if anybody from ARI really would have wanted to come on here. Although I know I had 500 invites on Facebook, and so I sent them out.
Well, Mark, you asked what I think about that. Is Jennifer Grossman going to dress up in her black outfit like Ayn Rand?
Yeah.
Again, did you any of you see that interview that Jeffrey Tucker did with Jennifer dressed up in a black wig and everything? That was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. I think she did that at Freedom Fest where she appeared as Ayn Rand. That's right. And it was really quite hilarious to see her. And so I don't know if they're coming back to Freedom Fest or not. But we've had, what's really odd, we've had both organizations at the same time at Freedom Fest. And that's shocking that ARI would do anything with the Atlas Society. There's that rift, and of course they wouldn't appear together on stage, but they were still together. They were both at Freedom Fest, which really, I was actually pleased to see that. It's about as far as it went.
You're very ecumenical.
It's interesting. Warren, one thing I forgot to ask you, have all of Dr. Branden's books been translated into Spanish?
Yes, they have been translated. And we had Jennifer a couple of years ago giving some lectures. I make this capitalism festival, and mainly speakers are objectivists. She was there. And yes, you can find the books in Spanish, all of them.
Wow.
That's good. I'm wondering how they go over in Spanish,
Warren, do you have one right behind you?
No, I don't. I don't read very much in Spanish. I have all of them, but they're all in English.
Oh, I see.
You have 3 people with the obligatory books in the background. I think Warren has the most.
I have some.
Have
you seen my totem pole of economics?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So who's at the top? You want to guess?
Yeah, we'd have to guess because it's impossible to read from the small.
No, well, there's no name. It's just a bust. It's Adam Smith at the top. Right below him is Keynes, and low man on the totem pole is Karl Marx. He actually has red eyes. Keynes has green eyes, and Adam Smith has blue eyes.
Oh yeah, now I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my idea is that I reject the political spectrum of left-right with Adam Smith on the extreme right and Karl Marx on the extreme left, like they're equal and opposites. They're not equal. Adam Smith's model is much higher in the totem pole. That gives you the maximum freedom, maximum prosperity. And then Keynes represents big government and middle of the road. And then Marx is the totalitarian, control freak, and he's at the bottom. But my Marxist friends say, "Oh yeah, that's good because Marx is the foundation of the totem pole."
Yeah, I got to ask, how do you think Nathaniel Branden impacted your lives?
Great question.
Yep.
Well, he was such an optimist. And I was fascinated, of course, with his story of his relationship with Ayn Rand. I thought his autobiography was really fun to read. I think he was very honest in his approach, and he was at the end of his life. He was very inquisitive, very friendly. He wanted to talk philosophy, and he was very upbeat about his outlook on life. So that really, and what really impressed me was again how he changed from being such a critic and could be quite harsh in his criticism to being very friendly and warm, hospitable. I was deeply impressed, and he was tolerant of other views. He didn't just say, "Oh, it's my way or the highway." I think that's very different than when I first met him. So I like somebody. It reminds me of what Dan Kahneman said, who is the psychologist who won the Nobel Prize with Vernon Smith in 2002. Kahneman has written a book called Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow.
Right.
And he said near the end of his life, "I like to change my mind because if I change my mind, I'm learning something new." I thought that was really profound. How many of us change our minds,
I've changed my mind. I mean, who else wants to answer that?
Well, I do. Well, not changing my mind. Yeah, I do. But I wanted to address your question, Chris, and that is, number one, I think the impact Nathaniel had on me was only second to Ayn Rand in helping me to think about philosophical issues like ethics, epistemology, aesthetics, and so on, and also the issue of self-esteem, not giving out participation awards, but I mean really accepting yourself and trying to be the best you that you can become. But there's a third issue. I think he probably had a really deep impact on me that helped me throughout life. If you remember, not too long after what we call the split, I think 71 perhaps, he wrote his
60,
third book,
yeah.
or third or fourth, depends on how you count them, The Disowned Self, right? Anybody read The Disowned Self? I thought when I read it, that was an incredible book. And if you fast forward to several years ago, he wrote a novel called Layers, Layers, and it's the layers of a person's soul and the pathway of their life. And that connected to The Disowned Self because the hero of the book had early in his life had a real passion for for writing, novel writing and plays and drama, and yet he became a clinical psychologist, and so he kind of pushed all of that youthful interest down, thinking, well, it's not important. I'm a psychologist. That's what I need to do, and that's what I need to be. Finally, so many life issues bubbled to the surface and were causing chaos and tension in his life that he was in therapy himself, and he worked through all this. And the moral of that was, if there is a deep passionate interest of yours, give it a place in your life to do it, and don't just stuff it down and like the rejected poor stepchild. That's a disowned part of yourself, but don't disown it. You should let it breathe free, like in other words, find a place for it. It can be a hobby, it can be a secondary side job or something, but you do yourself enormous psychological damage if you don't stay in touch with your all of your deep interests.
I'd like to raise a question. We have for a speaker. I always viewed Nathaniel Branden as kind of a motivational speaker, and I think that's his books were that way too. And so this year we have a guy named Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday is the hottest motivational speaker on the circuit right now. And he's written a book called Ego is the Enemy. And when I saw that title, I thought, oh, and by the way, he's a philosopher, and he's a Stoic. So Stoicism is his theme. Marcus Aurelius, all the meditations, that's his role. And he gave a motivational speech in front of the Alabama Crimson Tide football team in August of 2016. And the next year they won the national championship, and they've won the national championship several times since then. So a lot of people say, well, that's his speech. And if you can go online and you can read his speech, Ryan Holiday, and he basically says, you think only of your role. Make sure you do your role properly, and don't blame others. Do not ever blame someone else for the mistake, for losing. You do your role, and that's all you make sure you do your role, and you do it really well. And that's all you can do. Do not think of the blame game and stuff like that, which you see all the time in sports. You blame someone else for losing. And apparently that really worked. I don't know if there's anything that resonates with Nathaniel Branden on that or not, but I did like the inward. Make sure you do the best you can, and you can't worry about others that make mistakes. What do you think?
I agree. He actually wrote a book after the 6 Pillars book about taking responsibility. And obviously, if you're going to take responsibility, that means you don't point fingers at other people. You say, okay, this is what I'm in charge of, and I need to work harder. Like if you're trying to be a teacher and your student isn't getting it, maybe the student has a cognitive disability, but maybe you're just not the best teacher you could be. And maybe you need to up your game and learn some more ways of trying to help the student learn.
Have you heard of someone named Siegfried Engelmann?
Pardon?
Have you heard of someone named Siegfried Engelmann?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's an educational person, and one of his famous quotes is, "If the student didn't learn, the teacher didn't teach."
Yeah,
very good.
There's a lot of truth that,
as a teacher, I can tell you that's how I feel. If my students aren't getting it and they're bored to tears, it's my fault. If they're looking at their cell phone during my lecture, that's my fault, not their fault.
If I could interject one more question, Roger, you said that Nathaniel wrote a novel?
Yes.
Was it published? Because I
yes,
didn't know it.
yes, you can go on Amazon and you'll find it. It's called Layers, Layers.
Wow, was that later in his life, or?
Well, it was posthumous. He worked with a fella named Stephen Cox, who passed away 2-3 years ago.
Liberty Magazine.
Yeah. And Stephen was a fine editor, and he had a number of discussions with Nathaniel around 2000 to 2005, and he helped coach him through making the book exactly he wanted it to be. And then after Nathaniel passed, then Lee reached out and wanted to get it published, his wife. And so Stephen recommended me, and I edited the book, and then we published it. We published it on Sobel Weber or something, a publishing firm in New York City, but it's available on Amazon. I highly recommend it. You will find it a fascinating novel, and there's probably enough in there that sounds kind of like his pattern after his life that it will be kind of fun. It'll be fun also.
Is there
I didn't know about that novel yet. So, is there anything else that out there that was never published?
Oh yeah, a lot of stuff. For about 4 years after the split, he was doing monthly recordings called Seminar, and they were each like an hour, hour and a half with students from area colleges and so on. So there were like 48 LPs that were then made CDs or cassettes, and that material I transcribed some of it, but I tried to interest Lee in publishing it, and she says, "No, we're not going to do that." So okay.
So
Yeah, it's
Layers is available on Kindle and paperback.
Yep.
Yeah.
But not audiobook. It's too bad. I like to listen to novels on audio, but that's not available.
Well, shoot, Mark, I'll read it for you.
Roger.
Somebody could like clone his voice and get him to read the book.
Right. Oh, that'd be great.
I bet you that's that probably be
Yes.
an afternoon project.
I think
Roger,
it would work. Yeah.
Are you the only one here who ever met Patricia?
I did not meet Patricia. I
Oh, you
met
didn't?
Barbara,
Okay.
Barbara Devers, and Lee, but not Patricia.
Okay, I wasn't sure because
No,
it seems like you were involved at the time, but I could be wrong.
no, I was not.
Yeah. So, anybody else want to talk about how Dr. Branden influenced your life, or
Well, the question is, it's really difficult to address because it might be the other way around. What did he not influence in our life, right? Since when I was reading what he published, I was very young and was learning a lot and learning things that I had not even considered. One that struck me very much was that, for instance, that instincts do not exist, that you should have be truthful to reality and honest, and it's better to admit that you might not know what some explanation is for the behavior of some animals, than instead use a term like instinct to make people think that you know, but you really don't know. It doesn't explain anything.
Right.
So he, in a sense, taught me how to think. I was already a logical person. I admired Aristotle very much, but I owe Nathaniel a lot more about thinking. So that pretty much shaped my whole way at looking at life and therefore of being. So I think he was really one of the most influential people in my life.
Robert, was it you or was it Chris that asked what else has not been published? Was it you, Robert?
I asked.
that.
Huh?
Yeah, I suppose he's got lots of papers and stuff. I wasn't sure.
In addition, and this is also to answer the question, another influence on me was all of the wonderful book reviews that he wrote that called my attention to books I really wanted to read. He did reviews when he was with Rand, writing for the newsletter and the magazine, and then he wrote for a catalog that came out monthly called Academic Associates. One of his reviews in particular had a huge influence on me. It was by Arthur Koestler. It was called The Act of Creation. And that's a book about creative thinking, creative mental processing, and it applies to humor, to art, and to scientific discovery. And Koestler has this really thick book that's very entertaining, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it yet. It's well worth reading.
This is a side I didn't know about. He wrote a lot of book reviews.
Yeah.
That in itself is very much an art, and it's funny, obviously, but he did a lot of the book reviews because when the Objectivist newsletter was being published, Rand would usually write some big article and he would often do a book review. There were quite a few books there.
Yeah. And I think I also tried to interest Lee in doing a volume of his book reviews but she didn't think it would sell. So that's as far as it went.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that's as far as it went. I mean, and he ended up doing, what, a dozen books? And,
Yeah, at least. you mentioned Tibor McCann earlier. I think both Tibor and Nathaniel were just book dynamos. They did at least a dozen, if not 20 or more books, each of them, and it was astonishing. I mean, I strained to put out about 3 books of my own, and these guys are just whoa, amazing.
You mean writing books?
Yeah, writing and getting them published. Yeah.
Well. Nobody's ever going to beat Thomas Sowell, but
true.
Or Stephen King.
Isaac Asimov wrote quite a few.
Yeah.
Right. Mortimer Adler.
Stephen King writes. The thing about Stephen King, he also writes really fat books. It's pretty. And I've said too, looking back, if I could have one superpower, I'd like to have the power of super speed reading.
Me too.
I mean, to be able, I'd love to read Atlas Shrugged in 2 hours, for example, and remember everything. But yeah, so it's interesting too, because Dr. Branden, after he broke with Rand, I know he got connected to some other very interesting people out there. Apparently, he worked with Milton Erickson for a while, and I was really impressed when I heard that. Because Milton Erickson was just amazing. Was there anybody else that you can think of? Did people know who Milton Erickson was?
The hypnosis guy?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who is Milton Erickson?
Milton Erickson talked about the concept of Ericksonian hypnosis. He was also very much an influence on John Grinder and Richard Bandler, who created neurolinguistic programming, who had their own separation, which was somewhat like Rand and Branden, which is why a lot of their books are impossible to find now, because they were co-authored books. And I know for whatever reason, did anybody ever see or hear that debate that he had with Albert Ellis?
No.
No.
That Branden had with Albert Ellis?
Yes.
Sounds really familiar. I must have read about it or something.
What it was is Objectivism a Religion? That was the title of the debate. About 1967, I think.
Well, Ellis was definitely a giant of the psychology world. There's not much doubt about that.
Right.
Yeah, yes.
I tried to call Albert Ellis's off once when he was still over 90, and he still had voicemail and was still doing office hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. That impressed me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a big institute in Manhattan. I lived in New York for a long time. And I went to the institute. I was curious about it.
You're looking for answers, I think. What are some of the, I got to bring up one thing. Rob was at that seminar, and I heard this from Robert Campbell. When Dr. Branden showed up in Boulder, one of the first things he said was, "What happened to the women?" Because apparently in the 60s, it had been about 50-50. And by 1996, it definitely was not 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably
Anybody
more.
want to comment on that, or?
I know everything I went to in the early days of I read Atlas Shrugged when I was a hippie in the Haight-Ashbury, and I read a memoir about that. But in any case, when I first started meeting other people influenced by Rand, it was all men. So I don't know about New York City and NBI, because I came a little bit, a few years after that. But it just seemed like it was so not evenly distributed.
Molly, where was that? Where was that?
Well, let's see. I had to kind of. I rejoined Society after reading Atlas Shrugged. I was very impressed and thought she beat the pants off Karl Marx, who I was more familiar with at that time. And so I went back to college, and I went to University of Illinois. Anyway, I don't want to go into a whole thing of my history, but when I finally graduated and went to Chicago, I became a taped lecture person, lessee for Rand and whatever was going on. That that was after, much after the split. So, but it wasn't before the Kelly Rand Institute. And so I did that for a while. I had to kind of find people, and then I moved to New York City, and
Got it.
yeah, it was very male in terms of population dominated. All the things I did in New York City, they were objectivists. There were other objectivists, and then whatever. That kind of, I did want to make a comment about Branden and his influence. I know, after I read Alice Shrugged, I read everything. I ordered all the literature and read. At that time, Rand was actually publishing the Ayn Rand letter, but I read all the back stuff. And I loved Rand, and I can't right now. I'd have to go back and really do an exploratory job to figure out what were the things that Branden said that influenced me versus Rand. But one thing I did appreciate that is more recent is after they split, in the years after that, Branden made some critiques of Rand or sort of her influence on people. And I thought that was very valuable. And I just remember part of it was that Rand tended to sort of make heroes out of what seemed like emotionally repressed people. And Branden thought that was a problem with objectivism. And I connect that to, in the spectrum, men tend to be more on the side of, emotional reticence or emotional repression, and women the opposite. And it did, so anyway, I thought his comments about many objectivists and the sort of there was just a tendency for people to be a bit wooden, and as if Rand kind of, sort of approved of that sort. She did. I was in her apartment when she was talking about that, and she said, I sort of admire that type. Sort of the Reardon. The Reardon type that
Gary Cooper.
And the type of person who isn't really totally in touch with himself. Now, in Atlas Shrugged, that's one of the few characters that goes through a transformation, and it is to get more in touch with what he consciously. He meets Dagny and falls in love with her, but he doesn't. He has all sorts of conflicts about it. Eventually, comes through on that. But and I think I'm kind of rambling. So I thought Branden had some really valuable comments on that.
Relationship with Barbara. They seem to reconcile at the end of their lives. They came together at Freedom Fest, and both of them speaking, and they seemed to be friendly to each other. So that was really fun to see. And of course, Ayn Rand in particular was, she violated her own principle by committing adultery because she believed in contracts, right?
Right.
So, anyway, it was an interesting life experience for Nathaniel Branden and the affair and everything that went with it.
They did make peace toward the end. I was lucky to meet Barbara, and I did meet Barbara at Freedom Fest. It
was nice to see.
Yep.
Yeah, there aren't that many people from that original circle left.
They're all here, right here.
Well, Alan and Joan Mitchell Blumenthal are still alive, right? I haven't heard from them in forever.
I think so.
Well, one thing I remember too is they resigned from the iOS board when iOS invited Branden. They quit the board. They were on that board, and
right.
And there were a few other, but there aren't that many in those circles left. It's a.
Well, Chris, I'm going to have to leave. The stock market went through the roof, and lots of people are asking me what the heck is going on with our dear president.
Utter chaos.
Is Donald Trump a libertarian? Is Donald Trump a Randian?
No.
That's fine, Mark. I've still got some people on the West Coast that I hope will come on because, I picked a time where I said, okay, it's still early enough for the East Coast, still late enough for the West Coast, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go, but
Yeah.
thank you very much for the invitation. And I was delighted with whatever.
Yes.
And I was delighted to hear that so many of you have been to Freedom Fest. And, we're doing it in the California, of all places, this
Yeah.
year in Palm Springs. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So maybe I'll see some of you there.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
All right. Take care.
Yes. Bye-bye, Mark.
Bye-bye.
But yeah, back to your initial question of influence. For me, maybe perhaps somewhat similar to Molly's story is, I read Rand in college. Well, actually, I originally read it. I read Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal. It was on my father's bookshelf. But I read Atlas Shrugged when I was in college a little bit later, and that's kind of when I went in kind of like just research mode. And so I kind of just looked at everything that was in the library. And so like the second book I read after Atlas Shrugged was his biography, Judgment Day. And I feel like that helped me have like this kind of balanced, maybe, some people start looking at her as like a minor deity, and that, very much humanized her. So at least I never went through the phase of thinking that I found some kind of deity type figure. So it became very human. And so I don't know, that was certainly I don't know what would have happened if I didn't read the book. So counterfactuals are hard, but that certainly, I think, influenced my perspective on that.
It reminds me of that quote on Barbara Branden's biography where it says, those who praise Ayn Rand and those who condemn Ayn Rand both deny her humanity.
Yep.
And she was so right about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Molly, you said you went to college in Illinois. Is that right?
I did Champaign-Urbana. That was my undergraduate. Yeah.
Right. I went to college right next door to you. I grew up in Iowa, and this was in the in the late 60s. And you're talking about the proportion of men to women in the early days. And I know some people thought it was pretty much 50-50, but when I was at Iowa State University, which was kind of the University of Iowa was better, let's put it that way. But we had a little Rand group on campus, and my roommate and I were both objectivists or Ayn Rand fans, and we always had our eye out for a rational chick. That was how we said it. We need to find a rational chick. And boy, it's kind of tough, Maybe we should have gone to Champaign-Urbana or something. Maybe we would have found one there.
That's cute.
Mm-hmm.
So, Molly, I think if I remember correctly, you used to do Java software development in New York City.
Do Java what?
Software development?
Yes. How did you know that?
Well, we met at we used to hang out at the Boulder.
Sorry, Rob. Your name is so familiar, and I'm just.
I was a little younger.
blanking.
We were both a lot younger there.
Okay, yeah. I'm
all of
sorry.
us were.
Gee. Yeah, your name was so familiar, but yeah.
Yeah, we hung out at one time, and there was this interesting guy that was like investigating. I don't know. He was investigating alternative movements, and he kind of pissed you off. And I think he was. I don't know. Anyway.
You can trigger my memory.
Anyway, so have you been? I'm just curious. I've been fascinated. This maybe not really about Brandon as much, but I've been just fascinated by this merging of AI and software development.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you've kept up with using these large language models.
No,
I have. I use Perplexity AI. I use ChatGPT. I use them all the time. But no, I'm not really following, and I'm so far away from software development. I retired a little bit after the .com bust because I lost my paying job, and then I looked at my savings and I said, I don't know if I really need to go back to work, and I retired. So.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, how long were those meetings at Brandon's house going on? Those started in like 96, right?
I feel like it went on for at least a couple years.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I guess, so those meetings grew out. There was another guy named Ron Merrill.
Yes.
Ron Merrill. Is he still alive? Because he wrote that book, Ideas of Ayn Rand. Okay.
I imagine he'd be alive still.
Yeah.
He passed away 25 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Late 90s, I think.
Oh,
Yeah. So our philosopher group we met at his house for quite a while, and that's what led into the meetings with Branden. As a subset of those people.
Yeah, in fact, your meetings there were approximately 3 to 4 years before the ones that I went to. Same place. Around 1999 to 2000, 2001, just before he and Devers broke up, we had meetings up there. And I've already told the story about how he was listening to my wife praise his wife's tasteful decorations, and she said, "Oh, he was so generous. Anything she wanted to spend, that was fine." And Nathaniel said, "Well, I've always believed that when I die, I will be held morally accountable for all the money I didn't spend." And I thought that was a very funny thing to say. But one of the other things that happened there, and this is more Devers than Nathaniel, just what a gracious hostess she was. A friend of mine at that time came down from San Francisco and stayed at our place, and then we came up for the Sunday meeting. And Nathaniel and Devers put out a nice snack tray on this coffee table. And, it looks pretty good. A bunch of snacks and goodies, and oh boy, dig in. Well, my friend was a very finicky eater. You know, if it wasn't healthful or didn't have enough protein, then he didn't want any part of it. Except when he was somewhere else and he could get a half gallon of ice cream, and then he would just eat all that. Okay, he said, "Well, don't you have anything else?" She says, "Well, what would you like? I could maybe make you some chicken tenders." He says, "Oh, that would be fine." So she went in and thawed out some chicken tenders and made them for this guy. I thought, what a rude. You talk about ego or just complete cluelessness. You're their guest. You're their guest, you know, and he wanted her to cook for him. I thought, oh my God.
So I have a question for folks. One of the distinctive things about Branden to me is there are several interesting points where he would make where he would basically have like this keen observation of reading into a person or reading into a situation and extracting information where I had like no idea how he could do that. Like I've met a few people in my life like that. Well, they'll see someone in a glance across the room and correctly deduct 5 things going on. Like he did this to me at one of the objectivist conferences where I had I don't know what I call it, a semi-romantic encounter with a woman, but she didn't really want it to be like a public thing. So we like entered the dining hall separately. We sat at opposite sides of the table. And then he looked over and made a comment. I don't remember the details, but basically like acknowledging what was going on between us. And I was like, how? Like, maybe it was obvious to everybody but me, but he did a couple of those things. Did anybody else have any experiences with him where he seemed to draw out of thin air an observation?
Yep. And you know where I think he got that?
Yeah.
I think that came from Devers. They did workshops together, and she was very much into reading people's body language and deducing things about them. Like she could tell from a person's expressions and body language and so on that when they were a child, they were a bedwetter. Now, of all things, how in the world could you deduce something like that? It's almost more instinctive, right, Dr. Orbaugh?
How do you teach that either? That's what's amazing. You know what this sounds. You know what this reminded me of, Rob, when you tell that story. It sounds like, although not the same, obviously a medical doctor, but that sounds like something Dr. House would do. Because Dr. House would look at somebody and say, "Oh, here's what's wrong with you."
Right.
Well, right. Let's see. There was a television show called "Lie to Me" based on the psychologist Paul.
Yes,
Ekman.
I know that.
Paul Ekman, I think. So
Good show.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's based on an actual. I mean, the show is not like the actual person, but there was an actual psychology researcher, like the University of San Francisco, who basically researched how people drew these inferences, and read people, and did all kinds of experiments with how people's muscles contracted and mapped. I don't know. It was pretty extensive.
Right, micro expressions that happen for like a fraction of a second, and some people notice them explicitly, and other people it just kind of sinks in, and you don't know where your sense of that person's attitude is coming from, but it's actually coming from micro expressions that don't last long enough for you to consciously usually consciously notice. But some people are very perceptive, and they catch it like that.
Milton Erickson was like that. For example, Milton Erickson said he could tell who was coming in and coming into the house and going out of the house by how they slammed the door. He just could tell, hear them slam the door.
Wham!
Warren's asking me to share some photos. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can present those.
Maybe in the icon of
maybe I cannot present them, but I can present them. Maybe if you upload them to the chat or if you email them to me, because I can still check my email.
There's a little place in the lower left corner of my screen that says present, but I have no idea what that does.
Well, it says chat with everyone in the studio, and then if you right click that, you can see that you can paste, and you might be able to paste an image.
And you might be able to put the photos in the.
No. Let me see. Screenshot, save, print. Okay, maybe, yeah. I'll see. I'll copy this.
Maybe I'll share one while you're looking at that. I'll share one story to see if people react to this one. So in the first with Branden, that Devers was there, and there was kind of this larger group. There was this strange phenomena where, again, there's, I don't know, maybe about 6 of us, men in our early 20s, and independently, we all came to the belief that Devers was paying more attention to us in an unusual way than anybody else. So to repeat that, 6 different people independently came to the conclusion that one person was paying more attention to them than everybody else.
Yeah.
Which mathematically doesn't work out.
Each individual thought, like, me,
that she was paying more.
She's paying more attention to me. Rob thinks she's paying more attention to Rob.
Yes. And so at some point
that's amazing.
I don't remember exactly the process, but somehow we talked about it. We went to Cantor's, which is like a famous LA eatery place. And anyway, so we in this debrief, we were talking about it. And so we all came to this conclusion. And so at the next meeting, we asked her, like, how did we all come to this conclusion? And she just kind of smiled and nodded and said, that's the key to charisma. To make everybody believe that you're paying attention to them. So we never figured out the mechanisms that she was using. But whatever was going on, she must have been like noticing when people were noticing her and then paying attention to, because you don't notice when someone's looking at you when you're not looking at them. So I don't know. I don't know what the mechanisms are, but it was an interesting experience.
Devers was definitely a person you don't forget.
Yeah.
How'd they get together, by the way?
She worked in his office. She was a receptionist, or maybe she made appointments and things like. Well, that would be a receptionist. But she worked in his office actually while he was still married to Patricia before Patricia passed away, and then they gradually deepened their relationship and did workshops and what do you call those? Not workshops. The other word, intensives. They call them intensives.
Intensives.
Oh, I don't know, just like weekend workshops where you try to give people all this stuff. It's like you drink from a fire hose for a weekend.
Yeah.
Of course, half the time you do these things like that, nothing changes. But I wondered how they got together, and then how do you end up with Lee?
I know the story of that, and I'm just going to assume it's true. He had broken up with Devers, and he was very kind of depressed and sad and so on. And he did a book signing at a bookstore in LA or Beverly Hills or Hollywood. And after the book signing, he was outside and he was just kind of sitting on the curb. And she'd been at the book signing and she noticed how dejected he was, and she just started talking with him. And I guess he liked that. He liked, the fact that she reached out and was being compassionate and friendly. And they talked, and it developed into a close relationship.
Why was he dejected?
Well, because his relationship with Devers had broken up, and it was irreconcilable. Apparently,
Is it publicly known what happened with Devers?
no. It's publicly speculated, but I don't think anybody knows for sure.
That's right.
Devers died not that long ago. Chris
Really?
had a nice little tribute. Had a nice little tribute to her.
Oh,
And Chris definitely was invited, but. Yeah, Chris's health issues really keep him from doing things, unfortunately.
well, if you read Nathaniel's novel, you'll get kind of maybe a suggestion of one possible reason that his relationship with Devers broke up. But that's all I'll say.
Stuff like that happens, yeah.
I want more.
Fred, you haven't said anything for a while. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was going to share, I guess, one memory, although it's not with Nathaniel directly, but one of his works, I guess, that struck me the most was the article, the benefits and hazard of objectivist thought. I remember reading that one. It really, I remember it vividly to this day.
Yep.
I
use
to read
that phrase.
that.
I use that phrase "benefits and hazards" a lot. I think because of that essay.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, benefits. Oh, by the way, Warren did send me some of his photos. There are only 3 of them, but I'm going to present those pictures, so we will get those up here. Share screen. Let me see what I can do here. Yeah, I'll just.
I do remember one section in that article that was describing in the hazards section of objectivist thought. Nathaniel mentioned that there was some tribal society that he had studied, and said that when you took someone who did something bad and you put that person in the middle of the village, and every single person in the village had to say something good about that person, they never repeated the crime, basically. And he was saying that one of the issues with objectivist thought is what he referred to as repression. It's very,
I wish objectivism was more like that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to show these photos. I think we figured out how this works.
Oh, good. Oh, look.
Okay. There's one. Yeah.
I actually think I have a photo with him from Freedom Fest, but I'd have to search for it.
Okay. Let me see. I'm going to present another
Is that
one. Yeah.
you, Warren, in it?
Yeah. Was much younger then.
Yeah, there we go. Who's the other guy?
The other guy was the president of the university at that time. His name is Giancarlo Ibarwen.
That's a heck of an image back there too. Yeah, that thing.
That's the Atlas Libertas that I was talking about.
Then we got okay, there's one more to go. Yeah, those are all pretty cool pictures. When was this?
That must been at least 23 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
Here's
Out of
one.
2000, yeah.
Here's one. Can you see it? I don't know how to get it to show, but it's down there in the lower left. And how do you make it bigger?
Let me see. I'm gonna. Yeah, see. There's other ways to present these. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, that's
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a neat photo. Over on the far right, that's our right is John Hospers, and there's Nathaniel.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's Henry Mark Holzer and his wife Erica, and then there's Barbara Branden, and then I don't know the next guy.
The blonde-haired guy with the purple tie.
Yeah, who is that? Is that you? That's not you.
I don't know who that is.
And then the next guy I think is Robert Hessen. And
Yeah,
then,
that looks like I don't. It could. I never don't know what Hessen looks like. That looks a lot like David Mayer.
well, it might be. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think it's Robert Hessen because
Yeah.
he was pretty close to these folks. And then the guy over on the left, I do not know who that is.
Well, if you remember, David Mayer was at the Atlas Society seminars a few times as well. He was very much a scholar of Thomas Jefferson. He was a professor at Capitol Law School. I mean, maybe they just looked alike, but yeah.
Yeah, I got one more.
It could have been. It could have been Heston, though. Yeah.
I just finished reading a peer-reviewed journal article by David Mayer. As I was looking for, as a matter of fact, he gave a lot of lectures at IOS for a while for various summer seminars. And there's one lecture I contacted, Atlas Society, which is the current name, and I was looking for a particular. They gave me a list of lectures they have of his, but I'm looking for a lecture that I can't find, which is called something like 3 Generations of Radical Whigs. And I did find it's about the British radicals who were in contact with the founding fathers, and they're really neat. They span from the Glorious Revolution in 1688 to the American Revolution, and they were, and that's what Cato's Letters was written by 2 of them, John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon. In any case, I've been just immersed in this stuff. I'm hoping to write an essay on it, but. Yeah, I loved David Mayer's lectures. They were wonderful. And if anybody knows anybody that has I have a few cassettes of his things, but in fact, I contacted David Kelly, and David Kelly couldn't remember the lecture, but anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. Here's another photo from Roger Bissell. Yeah.
Now, I made this up. Actually, the 2 guys in front, that's me in the purple blue shirt, and the other guy in the striped shirt is the one who asked Devers Branden to cook him something. And so I just made it look like that we were the kids of Nathaniel and John Hospers. I photoshopped it together.
Nathaniel looks really happy there. I just love it when people look like they're sincerely happy. Yeah, Hospers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last photo. Can you get that one?
Yeah, the last photo where.
It's next to it. Now there's Nathaniel and Lee, and there is Barbara, and I don't know who that young guy is there that's hugging her. Does anybody
Harry
know?
O'Quinn?
Yes, I'll bet it is.
Yep, Kerry O'Quinn. Yeah, he's a great guy.
There you
haven't
go.
heard from him in quite a while.
There you go.
That is. Yeah, Kerry is an awesome guy.
He is.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you know Kerry by chance?
I'm sorry. Who did you ask?
Kerry, you, Roger. How do you know Kerry?
Me. Well, I was doing some research about a lecture that Nathaniel gave that never got published. It was called the Neurosis of the Intellectual, or something like that, and it was part of the Basic Principles course for about a year in 1966-7, somewhere in there, and it was basically about how some very intelligent intellectual people cave in socially and politically to the pressures of wanting to fit in and wanting to be approved and so on. So it's kind of a self-esteem issue, really. Surrendering your autonomy and your independence in order to fit in. And I thought, well, this is fascinating. And I thought maybe whoever had access still, perhaps, to those old recordings, the reel-to-reel recordings that they made of those lectures. And I heard that Kerry O'Quinn was one of those people. And so I reached out and tried to find out. And he said, well, he didn't have them, but he had a bunch of reel-to-reels down in his garage in Texas. And he would look the next time he went there. Well, he went there and he looked. No, he couldn't find it. So I gave up. It's like a lost trail.
Yeah. Yeah, Kerry O'Quinn. I know him. Actually know him from other networks, largely actors. Uh, you don't know Dan Fossey by chance, do you, Roger?
No.
Spells it Fauci, like Anthony Fauci, but yeah, okay. He's. Does anybody have a copy of The Passion of Ayn Rand available?
Not in my hand. No, not close.
Okay.
On DVD, I think I might have the DVD.
Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
I have
I think there were two
why-
movies. Were there two movies made about Ayn Rand? There was The Passion, and I think another one. There was A Sense of Life. I guess that was a documentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a copy of the book, but at my office, not here.
Oh, okay, that's the way it goes sometimes. Yeah.
Yep.
I was hoping somebody would hold up a picture in there because
Oh,
Dan Fossey's in one picture in that book,
all right.
but it's not that big a deal. Anyway, so yeah, so that was a good story, Warren. So Dr. Branden never learned Spanish, did he?
No, not that I know.
Well, it's worth asking. That's a. And people don't realize too that some of those countries in Central America aren't that big. It's not that big a deal to fly to them. They're pretty close down there.
Yeah.
Molly, were you involved with NBI at all, or did you just come in right
No,
after?
I came after that. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I read Atlas Shrugged in 1973, so it was after that.
That seems like it was a very interesting time for the whole movement.
MBI.
Well, after NBI, because there really wasn't an organization out there doing much of anything right after NBI collapsed.
Here's a
Yeah,
good one. Here, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there was somebody doing taped lectures. I've forgotten.
Yeah,
who-
here's that.
you know-
Here's that. Yeah, here's the wedding photo, of course. Yep.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Look at Nathaniel. Look at him. He looks like the deer in the headlights.
Oh, he looks like a little kid.
I
He does.
know.
Little
And
kid.
Barbara just looks like she's really happy. She's having a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that's a good photo. Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
I remember in the New York City objectivist meetups, they were ran by Iris Bell. I don't know what happened to her. She must have known Nathaniel, right? Since she knew Ayn Rand. I remember that.
I can't understand you, Fred.
Yeah, I'm having a little
Sort of an
trouble
echo
too,
or
Fred.
Did you hear me?
Yeah,
I
that's
was
better.
saying. I was saying
Better.
the New York City objectivist meetups were ran by Iris Bell, and I know that she knew Ayn Rand, so assuming she knew Nathaniel as well. I don't know what happened to her. If she's still. in
She
New York.
did, and I was in contact with her for a long time. I mean, I knew her when I lived in New York, and I've kind of lost contact with her. But yeah, she knew that whole group. She did graphics work for Ayn Rand. So
Yeah. Oh, here's
That's-
another fun photo. Yeah. What is this, Roger?
That's Nathaniel's 83rd birthday. That's the year 2013, which is not long before he died.
Yeah, he died in late 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Roger,
Yes.
stage, please.
Do what?
Remove all the photos from the stage
Oh, sure.
because
Sorry.
it's making it harder for me to manage the people.
Yeah. Remove from studio. Here we go.
Yeah. The only way to remove them, but I can remove them, is to kick you out as well, and I don't want to kick you out. Or of course, I
Well.
could kick you out and let you back in, but
Well,
anyway.
here I
Yeah.
am.
So, yeah, it just makes because I'm expecting other people to come on, so
Hey,
and
what time is
I
it?
don't want to miss them.
I need to depart actually. So
That's fine, Roger. It's been great having you.
thank you so much, everybody. It's great to hear you and meet you.
Yeah, I think
Nice
I
to
made
meet you,
part as
Roger.
well.
Yeah, Rob,
And-
take care.
It's good to meet
Molly.
you.
Yep, Warren.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've known your name, for decades and decades, but
Well,
Yeah.
here I am.
Yes. Okay.
Take care now.
All right.
Bye-bye.
It's nice to
Have a good night,
to
Roger.
see-
Bye bye. Yep. No, that's good.
Bye.
I'm
I'm gonna
expecting at least one other person to come in. I don't know who else hasn't. She was on the emails hasn't shown up yet, so I'll see who's
Well, and, Chris, what prompted this, and what are you doing more of? Have you done these kinds of things before? Or are you intending to do anything else?
This is the fourth time. Oh, did Rob go, or did Rob leave, or did something happen? Well, bye, Rob. I don't think I did anything that kicked him off, but oh well. I just noticed Rob's gone, so.
Yes.
I've done a few of these tribute panels. The panel for Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw went over pretty well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize you knew who they were. It seems like so many people had forgotten them. And I also did
Oh, sorry.
So I also did a while back a panel for Steve Cubby and one for Michael Bednarik. So they're a lot of work to put together, but they're kind of fun too. So I have them, and it's the only time I do anything live. I don't know if I should do anything. I don't know if Rob got kicked off. I hope I didn't accidentally remove him, but I am definitely expecting one other person to come on. So that's why I'm going to hang out here for a while. So in fact, yeah, everybody else is here. He's on the West Coast and he's working, so you know how that goes. So anyway, was there anything else? What do you think his best book was?
Well, I would say The Psychology of Self-Esteem. All his books are great, but The Psychology of Self-Esteem is the more fundamental, and all the rest are derivatives, like applications of his ideas. But if you want to know the core ideas, the philosophically funded ideas, Psychology of Self-Esteem would be my choice. What do you think?
That sounds right. Yeah, I didn't take the time to sort of go through things and see what. I've read all the stuff. Not all of the stuff, not nearly as much as Roger Bissell. Things that are unpublished and stuff like that. Yeah, I just remember that being really, just really an important work, and so I endorse that idea.
Yeah, that was his first book, right?
Yes, that was his first book. And then another book I think was very important from the historical point of view is Judgment Day. I really enjoyed reading that. That explained many things to us, that we saw things happening from far away.
I was more impressed with Barbara Branden's book, between those two, and I was really, because I had just known Rand, and also I had that sense of the just sort of almost mindless adulation around her, which I think it's understandable. But these people were just tripping over themselves in the inner circle. There wasn't much of an inner circle by the end of her life, but they were just trying to pretend, like vie for, I'm more of an objectivist than you are, or I'm a better objectivist than you are, or I agree with this stuff more deeply than you do, or something. It was just this crazy atmosphere around her, which I really had a sense of. And then Barbara came out with her book, The Passion of Ayn Rand, and I was so relieved, because she was saying the things that I had a sense of. And I think she broke it all up. She broke the whole, I can't think, I don't have the words, that adulation that was just unbroken and unquestioned around her. And it's not, I think she is one of the, I think, the world of Ayn Rand, and I think she's one of the greatest thinkers of all times. Yeah. But I really do. I think she's an Aristotle, but nonetheless, she did contribute to this sort of authoritarian atmosphere of, you're gonna, because she would punish people, if they said things she didn't like, and she'd been doing that for quite a while. And that, anyway, I was there at the last year and a half of her life or whatever, and that atmosphere had a stench to it. And so I was really relieved when Barbara Branden came out and just sort of broke open the whole thing and gave us a behind the scenes look. And I appreciated that. I mean, Nathaniel did the same thing, I guess, but I really liked Barbara's book.
I was born in 71, so I wasn't around the movement then, Molly, but it sounds like there was just a lot of confusion then, and that people sensed there's got to be more to this story than what we're hearing, but they're all wondering kind of what it was and why did, and some people figured, I think I know what happened, but there was no
the affair. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, people
comes out and
like the affair. Yeah. And it's not just the affair, but I mean, it's the whole thing that was going on that people,
And Molly, I don't know about you, but I really believe that if it had not been for this very ugly breakup, I think Ayn Rand might very well have changed the world, but I think it completely destroyed the momentum that the movement had.
Oh, really?
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah. I don't know if the movement's ever gotten back that kind of momentum since then.
Yeah, because MBI was really going strong and growing. Yeah.
Well, it was also creating a book service and creating some things that people could use. And, if it had stuck around, you'd had people looking for answers. And, and overall,
I think in that regard,
but I mean, isn't it fair to say that a lot of these people were better off because they were involved with NBI? I mean, I don't know. I don't know about some of the people though who get hurt, never say, they just disappear and you never hear from them again,
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Well, I mean, weren't people better off because of their involvement with NBI? Yeah,
I would think so. For God's sake, yes. Oh yeah, I didn't mean. No. I mean, I think Rand was just totally. I mean, here I was a left-wing hippie, and she just gave me a whole wonderful, incredible view of life and of how society works. I mean, how people can interact benevolently and everything, because the leftist view is so dark. It's everybody is exploiting everybody. And so Rand, I think her view, I mean, it just saved my life and it gave me a life. So no doubt NBI and Branden was great at promoting her philosophy, I think. And I think Rand's this fabulous philosopher, and I think she was her own worst enemy. I mean, she got so, well, I mean, I have a theory, I just have a theory about it, what happened, but not so much with her and Branden. I don't really care that much, but why she tried to create such a, worshipful group that couldn't say anything that wasn't, approved by her, and her obsession with having everybody approve of everything. And she changed her life as the two Brandens pointed out, from being a person in the world who interacted with people that disagreed with her, that were, potential peers or, so forth. And then to just having a few, worshiping acolytes around her that wouldn't say anything that would distress her. And if they did, she'd, scream bloody murder. So she, due to her own, I think she was enormously hurt by the reception of Atlas Shrugged, and she got really bitter, and, she just kind of pushed everybody except these young, adoring worshipers. And that's the problem. I mean, that was the problem that caused, I think, kind of the poison that ultimately, having the affair with Branden, I don't think was a great idea. But
I sometimes think that there's a tendency of people to have that happen, though, they have these people who criticize them and maybe disagree with them. And then eventually the yes men come in and the yes men just push the other people out.
Okay.
You know, and it's,
well, Brandon did that. I mean,
I've heard of it. I don't want to, necessarily put blame on people.
Yeah.
But I've heard of it. I've heard of it and seen it happening with other people too.
Yeah.
I mean, people said it happened with Chuck Noll when he coached the Steelers, that he used to have these assistant coaches who would, argue with him. And then after 15 years, he just had a bunch of yes men. And just because there's like, well, how can I, after winning 4 Super Bowls, how can I disagree with Chuck Noll? It's
and Rand was, so I think you're right. I think these, people came in and Nathaniel Branden was the worst of them in that sense. I know people, who would talk about what it was like to be around him. I mean, it was just, he really,
yes,
he just really, he was arrogant. It's a word. I mean, it was, vindictive arrogant,
I think Nathaniel Branden sounds like he reinvented himself a lot. And I think that's probably a healthy thing to do if circumstances force it to you. I mean, and in a way, I also think apparently he also started making more money and NBI was kind of holding him back. But the other thing too is, one thing else too regarding NBI, from what I've heard, Barbara was actually doing all the work. I mean, in the sense of, know, sure the rent was paid, making sure the bills were paid and doing out, maybe taking care of the book orders and stuff like that. I don't know, how big it was, but it was something that I think was, it seemed like it was a lost opportunity. But something else I've realized too is lots of great thinkers have their jump the shark moment, and sometimes I say 1968 was Ayn Rand's.
Wait, I'm sorry. What's this expression?
Jump the shark.
What does that mean?
When it stops being cool.
Well, it refers to TV series, generally TV shows. And there's an episode of Happy Days where Fonzie gets on water skis and jumps over sharks in water skis, and people said that was when the show started going downhill. Okay. So now they call that when something that's really good starts not being so good, they call it jumping the shark.
Sorry, I'm so naive. Thank you.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Oh, my husband's in the background. He's laughing. Yeah. He's laughing probably at me because I don't know the thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. Well, it was really unfortunate. On one hand, MBI did this great service of getting her ideas out to a large number of people. And on the other hand, the whole thing blew up. And there's been other moments. Living in New York. Do either of you know who Victor Niederhofer is?
Oh, yes. He's still around.
Okay. But did you ever go to his junta, or whatever you call it? Junta?
No, I haven't. Is he still alive?
I don't know if he is. I guess we'd have to Wikipedia him. I don't know because he's, a lot older than I.
Well, he was one of the better donors to Liberty Magazine, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Liberty. Yeah. By the way, my late husband was Larry Seacrest. Do you ever remember?
Oh, I know who he was. Yeah, I knew that was where that was from. Yes, Seacrest.
Yeah.
Did you read Larry Seacrest.
Strange Little Town in Texas. Did you happen to read?
Alpine, Texas, Sul Ross State. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever hear the story about what? Well, never mind. I've got a lot of stories, and we'll be way off topic. Nathaniel Branden. So
yeah, I want to stay on Nathaniel Branden. I want to stay up. Fred, you have anything else to say? Because you've been the quietest of the people here.
Well, I was just wondering, we spoke about motivational speakers in our libertarian freedom movement, and Harry Brown was one of the ones who got me most excited. I was curious if he was inspired a lot of his work by Nathaniel Branden, more so than Ayn Rand, perhaps. I mean,
a lot of people were inspired, I think, by Nathaniel Branden. It's interesting how that works out. I mean, you find your inspirations. There were certainly polls I remember doing, and people ended up. When Liberty Magazine did a poll, and they said some people, credit Nathaniel Branden with converting them to libertarianism. So it's, which I thought was interesting to hear. So,
I thought that Harry Brown's "How I Found Freedom in That Unfree World,"
Yep.
which was his famous book, was similar to a lot of Nathaniel Branden stuff.
Yeah, I haven't read that book. I probably should. There's so many books I got to read. It's sounds like I should read The Psychology of Self-Esteem. It's I back in the 90s, I was like, all these people like Nathaniel Branden are so crazy, and now it's like all these people like Nathaniel Branden have done a lot of really interesting things.
He did indeed.
It's funny how that changes. Yeah.
I thought, did you bring it up, Chris, or somebody brought it up about are people still reading Nathaniel Branden? And then Warren, you mentioned how he's used in a course at UFM, which is great to hear. Because I don't know how he would be sort of getting out to people unless they become interested in Ayn Rand and kind of go find out, all the old newsletters and stuff. And I don't know.
I've heard of people getting to him not through Ayn Rand, though. That doesn't happen very often, though. But I mean, he's certainly sold enough books that there is a difference out there.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
How did?
Yes, as I told you, one of the most important teachers at the faculty of psychology in our university is teaching Nathaniel Branden's ideas, and has changed a lot the direction of students thinking in that way. He also gives lectures around the country and has a very prosperous office. Where he actually uses Nathaniel Branden's methods to help people. So yes,
That's terrific, Warren. I've not heard of any avenues by which Brandon's being currently taught or read or.
Yeah,
Do we have any really extreme stories? I mean, literally, like somebody. I was about ready to put a gun to my head, and then I read Nathaniel Branden.
Oh. Well, Warren, it sounds like you're the guy who teaches him. Might have stories like that from his students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I need to go too. I was visited by my husband who knows lots of people.
Stuff happens, Molly. Yeah, I don't want to keep anybody who doesn't want to be here.
Well, this was a terrific idea, Chris.
Yeah.
And it's very nice to meet you, Warren. I was very impressed with UFM. It's wonderful that it exists in the world. Okay.
Nice to meet you, Molly.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Yes.
I need to leave as well.
Oh, you're leaving, Fred?
Yeah, sorry.
Hell, I understand, Fred. Stuff happens. I don't expect. I don't want a captive audience. It's.
Are you still in New York, Chris?
I've never been in New York. I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Because I thought we met in person in New York at one point.
Don't know when or where it would have been, but who knows? I mean, I've been in New York City, certainly, but yeah.
Well, I'll let you know if ever I stop by Austin.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for setting this up.
Yep. Yeah, stuff happens.
Take care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how are you doing, Warren?
Fine, thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate that. And
yeah, I appreciate you coming out too, Warren.
Sorry,
it's been a good it's been a good day. I think, like I said, I think you have the most books.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've got plenty, as you can see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You've been down there how long?
Where?
At UFM.
45 years. For 45 years. I started teaching in 1980. And I teach in architecture school.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
Because I am an architect by profession, and I teach in the School of Economics. I teach Mises, and then I teach this graduate school objectivism. So I spend quite a lot of time at the university. You have a new guest there, Judd Weiss.
Yes, hello.
Yes, we have Judd Weiss on. How are you, Judd? I really was glad to get you on here. I know it's not as convenient for you, but I wanted to get East Coast people on too. How are you, Judd?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got a great voice for this stuff too, Judd. I mean, you always talk. You're very articulate. Judd, tell people who you are and how Nathaniel Branden influenced you, because you got a lot of great stories.
Yeah, well, I was his biggest fan, and before Nathaniel Branden, I got handed a copy of Anthem at 14 years old at high school, and I read like 20 something books from Ayn Rand, and then I got this copy of Who is Ayn Rand at a weird used bookstore called the Iliad in NoHo Arts District, and it was written by Nathaniel Branden, and I knew he had written some articles, and so I read that, and later I found out he disowned that book, but in any case, I read it, and then I just started reading all of Nathaniel Branden's books, and I feel like while I learned a lot from Ayn Rand, I grew a lot from Nathaniel Branden. So that was like late high school. I was like 17, 18. I read all of his books. I would go to any book signings that he was at in SoCal. I'd drive out by myself, be there, got like a second to talk to him while he's signing his autograph. I was like a huge fan. And I feel like I was raised more by Nathaniel and his books than I was by my own parents, which is quite a statement.
Oh, wow.
Hugely influential on my life.
Yeah, Judd. That's why I wanted to get you on here. I mean, you were even apparently his chauffeur for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it wasn't until years later I went to an objectivist salon, and he was at the salon, and I was talking to him, and that's when I started like helping him and Lee out. Lee is his wife at the time, and he was getting older, and I would come by, and he loved that I knew all of his books and writings. I was very proficient in everything. I mean, obviously I was a glowing fan, but like he stopped driving at some point, and Lee was so appreciative that I offered to just give him rides for like routine things like pick up dry cleaning and random errands. And I was thrilled to do it just to get to talk to him more. And so I was happy to do it, and Lee was appreciative. So like when he stopped driving, I started giving him rides everywhere.
Yeah. Judd, you're a little loud. Can you, I don't know if you're maybe turn the microphone down or something, but yeah, I don't know if there's a way, anything I can do, but anyway, that's great. I guess that's a way to get free therapy, offer to drive your therapist around,
I wasn't doing it for therapy.
Now you're too soft. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go back to
how about now?
Yeah, that's good.
I wasn't doing it for therapy. I was just doing it because I was a huge fan. I wanted to talk to him about stuff, and I became close friends with them. I would have dinner with him and his wife all the time. I'd bring people by all the time. I would see him like several times a week, especially in the later years of his life. And I even hosted his 81st and 82nd birthday at my house. Was it even the 80th? I think maybe even the 80th birthday.
Yeah.
I did it in 2011 and 2012, if I remember right.
Yeah. So that had to be pretty cool. You had Dr. Branden at your house, and Judd, I gotta quote you on something you said on Anarchast once.
Sure.
And you said, "It's not obsessive compulsive disorder; it's obsessive compulsive advantage."
Yes. Not obsessive compulsive disorder. It's obsessive compulsive advantage. I say that a lot.
Yeah. Is that something? What did Brandon think of you saying that?
Oh, I said a lot more controversial things to him that I would expect him to be taken aback. But that was just about if you want somebody to do a arduous task that takes a lot, that really involves a lot, you can't really drag them through that. They've got to be passionate for that. So, like, for example, one of my favorite musicians puts out like 7 albums a year, which is crazy, and they're all masterpieces. They're phenomenal. You can't drag somebody to create 7 musical albums in a year. They have to be a level of obsessive or another word is passionate to be able to do something like that. Really commit themselves. They really got to be really excited about a vision and going for it. So I use the word obsessive as another word for passionate, and I'd say that that's a really important advantage. So I say that a lot. I don't think Nathaniel would disagree with that one.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, obsession can be bad too. For example, if you get obsessed with a woman or obsessed with somebody who wronged you, but yeah, it can also be very positive. It's like, oh, there's Chris Baker. He's done 72 shows about Javier Milei.
Yeah. So, let's say rational obsession. You don't want to have an irrational obsession.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, but sometimes I think obsession is just you find one thing that really motivates you and you just grab onto it. Yeah. I thought, what else do you think you learned from him during this time? I mean, because, it sounds like, just a lot of them sometimes these things just rub off as you're being with these people.
Yeah. So, the most controversial thing I told him was because I'm so proficient in his books, I could say something like this. I said, all of your books have the word self-esteem in them. Pretty much all of your books have it in either the title or the subtitle. And I don't think what you're teaching people is actually self-esteem. I think that that's actually nonsense. And I, that he was taken aback by, but I said, what you're teaching people is self-improvement. And the consequence is a higher esteem in yourself. And he smiled. He really appreciated that. It's a different perspective. He's teaching people how to get self-esteem as a consequence, not just teaching them how to feel better about themselves.
Yeah, because I think self-esteem comes from just, creating victory or creating, setting yourself up for wins and then creating wins, It might like a baby gets self-esteem from learning to walk.
Sure. Yeah. Your esteem is it's your esteem of yourself. It's how you view yourself. How highly do you respect yourself? And you can't really fake it. You can try to pretend you're at a certain level, but better to just reach higher levels and you will esteem yourself at that level.
Yeah, and you keep just going to higher and higher levels. I mean, how long were you chauffeuring for him?
I mean, that was a few years towards the end there.
Yeah, and what point were you at in your own life?
Good question. Well, I think I saw. When was it that I started seeing him? I think it was like 2010 or 11 is when I first started hanging out with him as a friend. And 2010. Yeah. And he passed, I believe, 2014.
December 2014. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was those years that I got to know him personally. Before that, I only ever had a chance to talk to him at a book signing while he was signing my book. That's it. I might have made some offhand comments to him. I didn't know him personally, but it was that period, which wasn't his prime years. But
you were already out on your own then, I guess then. So right, and that were you out of college or?
Yeah, no. I bought my house in Bel Air by that point, and I did that in 25. I've been selling commercial real estate. I made my own life, and I was a decorated commercial real estate broker I was in the top 10 in the state of California, top 20 in the world for a couple of years in a row before that. So
Oh,
I've
Jesus,
been doing a
you did
lot.
really well then.
And I feel like a lot of my accomplishments can be attributed to what I learned from Nathaniel Branden.
Yeah. That's really amazing. Yeah, I knew. Yeah, I didn't realize you'd done that well. Yeah, but certainly, real estate, and that's a tough real estate market to be in.
Yeah, you're swimming with vultures. You got to learn how to
Yeah.
navigate.
Yeah. I'm sorry we've ignored you, Warren. Anything else you want to add to this?
No problem. It's fascinating, the stories. I really enjoy it very much, but unfortunately, I will have to leave you.
Yeah.
But thank you. I'll watch the rest of the show later.
Yeah.
And nice to hear your stories, Judd.
Thank you, Warren. Good to hear from you.
Very, very, very interesting. And thank you very much, Chris, for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Warren. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Well, I'm really glad I got you on here, Judd, because I knew you had a lot of good stories to tell. It's because you're on Berwick's show that one time, and I heard all those. Camera not working?
Yeah, no camera today. I apologize.
It's fine. Yeah. Well, sometimes also, just getting rid of the camera will save on bandwidth issues too. Sure. What else you got to tell, Judd? What do you think is his best book?
Ooh, that's debatable. Depends on what you're going for. But I'd say that the book that had the biggest financial impact on my life was definitely Taking Responsibility. That changed my perspective.
In what ways?
Well, it made me a lot more self-reliant. Whatever the situation is, there's plenty of people that are at fault, and somebody screwed you, somebody did something, somebody didn't do something that you were expecting. Whatever it is, don't worry about it. Just focus on handling it, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward.
What else?
Like not blaming. Like they're all really valuable. Each of these, he wrote his opus would obviously be the 6 pillars of self-esteem, and responsibility is one of the 6 pillars. And then Art of Living Consciously is also another phenomenal book. Some of his earlier ones, like the Disowned Self, was a very unique one. That was a surprisingly dark book, unusual in his lineup, but that's about self-acceptance and the problem of not following self-acceptance. So the Disowned Self is a pretty strong, striking book as well. I highly recommend it. But that one was an earlier one. It seemed like he didn't have his 6 pillars together at that point, but that became a pillar later, self-acceptance. These are all pillars of self-esteem. So the more you up each of the pillars, the better. I don't have them, the 6 pillars written in front of me, but from memory, it's, there's taking responsibility, living consciously, living productively, self-acceptance, that's 4, integrity, 5, and what am I missing?
I'm not really sure. Judd, one thing I'd ask is, do you think people would be best off just reading his books in the order of publication, or is there an order that people?
No.
Is there an order you read them in?
The first book I read actually was A Philosophy of Self-Esteem, which was, The Psychology of Self-Esteem, which actually was a philosophy book. Which
was actually his first book, though, too.
No, yeah, that's what I thought until I found Who is Ayn Rand was actually his first book.
Yeah. Who is I? Yeah, I'm not counting. Yeah, I remember him saying, "I wish that book had never been written," and that was co-authored with Barbara.
Right, because it was basically like a puff piece about Ayn Rand, and he didn't feel like it was.
I've not read it. Yeah,
I read it. I liked it at the time, but I was in high school at the time. I think I still have that copy with the cover falling off. It's an old book.
I think that book's long out of print too.
Yeah, oh yeah, long out. I bought it when it was out of print.
Yeah,
and that was in the 90s.
That might not have been cheap either. I bet.
I don't think it was too expensive. It was like the Iliad bookstore. They had a lot of old books, and I just dug in. I found it. I was shocked. I didn't even know that it existed. He doesn't have it up on his site. So, in any case, it wasn't a bad book, but it was definitely a glorified puff piece of Ayn Rand, and one that he disowns.
Yeah.
The other pillar was being self-assertiveness, or assertiveness.
Yeah, so, honoring the self, 6 pillars of self-esteem, taking responsibility, psychology of self-esteem, how to raise your self-esteem, art of living consciously, psychology of romantic love, the disowned self, breaking free.
Breaking free was another dark one. Breaking free was like after the disowned self, and that was just like showing people trying to break free of whatever traumas they have, typically around their childhood, typically around their parents and upbringing, and breaking free of that. I mean, these are things I read. This is like 30 years ago, back in high school era.
Yeah, I've heard good things about breaking free too. Anyway, yeah, it's what kind of car did he have, Judd?
A Tesla.
He had a Tesla, serious?
Oh no, did he have? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no,
I don't care about your car.
There was no Tesla for him at that time.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember. Nothing memorable.
Automatic or standard, or?
I mean, automatic.
Yeah,
probably had a great
time. Sometimes it says a lot, what kind of car a man has.
I mean, I knew him in his like 79 to 83.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was driving a Porsche. He'd be driving a grandpa's boat at that point. He was getting slower. He was a lot more with it when I first met him. There was a move that happened where he moved a very wealthy fan, supporter, and donor paid for him to move into like a really beautiful penthouse on the Wilshire corridor from where he was. He was in like Brentwood area in like an apartment with Lee. And then he moved to this really beautiful penthouse. But that move of gathering all this stuff together was really hard on him, and he never was quite the same after that. And so he declined kind of rapidly after that move, sadly. And so the conversations got less and less, let's say, quality.
Yeah.
But he had some hospital situation. Like he was in the hospital for something. It was like for back surgery or something. I forgot what it was. Why? It was too long ago. And they gave him the wrong medication that he had an adverse reaction to. And I think he almost died from it. And the nurses weren't paying attention or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
And it was after that hospital visit, which was before I met him, that he started rapidly going downhill cognitively.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I hate hearing those stories.
And that's when he stopped writing, and like it just he was really like together and like pulling the weight before then, but after that he was in a diminution.
Did they sue anything or not?
Oh, no, I don't think they did. But, they had grounds for it.
I wonder a lot when I hear this. I mean, I sometimes wonder about my oldest brother, because medical errors, it's really funny what happens when you give the wrong medication. That's something I learned from the people who do Amazonian plant medicines is really every medicine is a poison and every poison is a medicine. And there's a lot of truth to that.
I don't know. Every poison is a medicine. Maybe not arsenic, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, but
he apparently these like the nurses that were not paying attention seriously damaged one of the greatest minds of our generation.
Judd, I got asked too. Was that the first time that somebody you really loved, you watched that happen to them? I mean, because I've watched that happen to I watched that happen to my own parents, and it's just always so. It's you just want to cry. You really do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sad and really frustrating.
Yeah.
But he had he still had a really fun sense of humor. So a lot of like objectivists tend to be very cold and rigid, and he didn't really like that. He liked people to kind of like loosen up. He was just constantly making jokes. Like I remember. I forgot, like his dog was like chewing on something kind of aggressively, and he said, "Oh, we don't share the same perspective on this," or something like that. He was just constantly like joking. Like I'd ask him if he'd like something, like, "Here, would you like to sit?" And he said, "I'd like to levitate." Just constantly just joking around about stuff. Fun guy. And brilliant, smart, intelligent. Love to like have long, passionate discussions about abstract concepts. I mean, frankly, he, as an arrogant 28-year-old, started the objectivist movement with the Nathaniel Branden Institute. It was pretty ambitious. So, absolutely brilliant guy. He's evolved a lot since then. After splitting with Ayn Rand, he really dived into psychology and became the father of the self-esteem movement, which is another massive thing.
It sounds like he reinvented himself several times. As I like, I mean, I don't know how many times would you say he did reinvent himself?
Well, that may have been even more impactful what he did in psychology, because it not as much towards psychologists, but towards the personal development, self-help movement.
Yeah.
All of these gurus later made a tribute product to him with like Tony Robbins and I think Brian Tracy and even David D'Angelo and all these other guys were like contributing to like some tribute product for Nathaniel Branden. He was never the arena rock band, but he was like the artist that inspired arena rock band. So it's like he wasn't U2, he was like Jeff Buckley, if that makes any sense to you.
I know what you're saying. It's he's not somebody who is necessarily commercially successful, but somebody that everybody else who is successful, maybe the people, who were, I mean, or for example, as I say, Buddy Holly never really sold that many records, but Buddy Holly went to England and influenced all these musicians, including the Beatles. It's and Jerry Lee Lewis as well. It's
Yeah. So he's like an artist rather than like a massive commercial artist. He was commercially successful, but not massively commercially successful.
Yeah. I mean, he's certainly not as big as Tony Robbins. I know, Brian. No. David D'Angelo, seriously? Oh my!
Yeah, loved him. Yeah, seriously. Look it up. I think David D'Angelo is the one who spearheaded the project.
Oh yeah, David D'Angelo's had an interesting career. I mean, it's I don't know what he's doing now, but I certainly know of him. He was, he was a lot of these guys in the self-help business though seem to reinvent themselves. Yeah, I know who Brian Tracy is though. Yeah, he's getting up there too. Yeah. Did he ever talk about? I know he'd worked with Milton Erickson for a while too. Did he ever talk about Milton Erickson?
No, I don't know who that is.
Okay, well, Milton Erickson was Eric's self-hypnosis and stuff like that. He later helped pave the way for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what else did you take from him, Judd? It's
Well, a lot of it was lifelong things from when I was younger.
Yeah.
You know, he definitely started degrading a lot towards the end. So those weren't like super insightful, meaningful conversations, but I did spend a lot of time with him in those later years. You know, it was a huge honor to throw the I think it was his 82nd birthday. That was a huge event. We had it was like well over 300 people at my house. It was kind of too packed.
Yeah.
And I said that I'd like to thank Nathaniel Branden for being at a place where I could throw an event in Bel Air in tribute to him, something like that, as my like honor to him. I said from the stage, and then he came up, and it was his birthday and all that. And another thing is that he liked coming to my parties. I would throw parties at my place in the hills, and he would always like kind of find an excuse to come out, and he'd try to stay up late at my parties, and he was just there. He'd show up.
I believe that. Yeah, he sounds like he's that way. Yeah, it sounds like he really was glad. And you know, Judd, what's funny is when people like that want to hang out with you, it really gives you a lot more confidence. You know, I mean, just imagine, you know, if Michael Jordan comes up to me and says, "Hey, I want to play basketball with you," it's like, well, he must think I'm pretty good if he wants to play with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never going to be as good as he is, but you know, it's.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. He would love to. He wanted to hang out. He was looking for reasons to like, you know, kind of be a little bit more social. I also threw a party for. I would have speakers, so it would be kind of cool Hollywood, like cool crowd parties. But I would have speakers on a topic, and it could be a controversial topic. That's okay. Nobody has to agree. We can all agree to disagree. But I had a lot of libertarian and anti-drug war or type of topics and stuff like that. And one time I had Yaron Brook, who was at that time the head of the Ayn Rand Institute, the mortal enemy of Nathaniel Branden, was the speaker at an event. And I invited Nathaniel, and he came. And I introduced them. And I had a friend take a picture when that happened. Or maybe I took the picture. And
this is legendary.
Yeah, and that picture got online and created a whole angry firestorm among the ARI Ayn Rand Institute message boards because they're like super toxic for no reason, and they're furious. And Yaron said I was ambushed by Judd, and I chimed in. I said 100%. I ambushed him, and I'm glad I did. It was hilarious. and you know what? Everybody survived. The impossible happened, and it wasn't a big deal. And they didn't even say anything of any anything meaningful. It was just very cordial. Hi, nice to meet you. Nothing. I got a picture of it, so it looks like they're in conversation, but there really wasn't anything of substance said. And like, is that such a bad thing, or do we have to be so upset that people that agree 99.9% of things met when they have a disagreements about something?
Yeah, you know, Judd, I got to know, did he ever say anything about ARI or the whole direction of the objectivist movement?
He was absolutely not a fan of Peikoff. I think he may have said a few things. I think he was kind of disappointed in Peikoff and the way he was going about things. But yeah, I would say things about like what I thought were some of the most toxic parts of the liberty movement.
Yeah.
And I've been around it, you know, because of
my
because I'm good with the camera. I'm flown out to shoot all these events. I go to a lot of liberty events, and I try to make these nerds look cooler, one nerd at a time. And they use my photos for their profile photos. So I've been around, and I'd say that the most toxic places in the space are really where you find the true believers. And that would be the Libertarian Party, the Ayn Rand Institute objectivists, and the hardcore anti-war community. Some of the most toxic, hostile, nasty people I've met in this space. Now, that's not all of them. And there's a lot of cool ARI guys, and there's some cool people in the Libertarian Party, but that's where this is where you see some of the most toxic elements. And I guess it's like this true believer thing where if they really demonstrate themselves to be sufficient enough of a true believer, then that's their moral compass, and every other behavior from them seems to be excused.
I don't know what to tell you about that, Judd. Also, I've also noticed some very toxic people among what I would call the anti-police crowd.
Sure. I mean,
yeah.
I don't have a lot of love for police either, but like, yeah, there's absolutely a lot of toxicity.
Some of these people are, but some of the people on the other side just make the police sympathetic. It's, Judd, I don't know too, but maybe he also realized that a lot of these people in the movement really needed this. I mean, there are, I think a lot of people come, into Ayn Rand because they're hurting or they're needing something. It's. I mean, some of the people I think who benefited most from Ayn Rand are people who came from really abusive homes, and it somehow gave them something to survive. It helped them survive. It's.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand why they'd be attracted to that. But it sounds like you had a pretty good upbringing. Of course, you had the good luck, of being in LA anyway, so you could, go see him.
Yeah, I was in LA. I had my own difficulties with my dad, but whatever. I kind of went off on my own. I'm very different. And
you always change. Yeah,
but yeah, I was like, I really clung on to Ayn Rand when I first got into it, and when I was in high school and I was really like deep into Ayn Rand, I went from like being kind of like a metalhead, wearing black, listening to like Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson and that kind of thing in the early 90s, to getting into Ayn Rand, which was a very different perspective. Because if you look into Marilyn Manson, he's actually very intellectual and he's pretty eloquent on these topics. But reading Ayn Rand allowed me to poke holes into all of that really, really fast with a little bit of not much work, and brought me out of this kind of like tear it all down perspective into a more productive perspective. And I feel like that was super useful, but I think I was becoming a know-it-all asshole. And I was the typical annoying objectivist stereotype. It was me. And I feel like a lot of the crowd that gets into objectivism and specifically goes down the ARI side, it's not that we have significant philosophical disagreements. I just think that they are stifling their own development, and there's a lot that they can do to grow as people and enjoy more meaningful, pleasant lives. And I think they're in the way of that.
Did you ever get into Rush?
I love 2112.
Yeah.
Love it. And I don't like most Rush. It feels a little dry to me. I respect it. I respect the talent and the song structure, but I like stuff with a little bit more heart that resonates with me. Like there's passion there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like Rush. I love 2112. That's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, it's been, Judd, it's, I don't know. I think there's not that, I don't know if there's that much more to say at this point. Maybe I'm getting a little tired too. Appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
I wish we could have had more people here. But that's how it goes sometimes.
I don't mind to close it out.
Yeah. There's you had a lot of good stories though. And, I was glad, I'm glad I've been wanting to have you on here for a while, Judd. I still, I took your clip, a clip of you on Tom Woods when you said, that the Libertarian Party is a convenient quarantine pen, because unfortunately I'm finding that to be the truth.
For the most toxic elements in the liberty movement.
Yeah, it's really and I don't know what we do. I don't know what our movements do to fix this, because I think if there's no breakup with Ayn Rand and Nathaniel Branden in 1968, I think she would have changed the world.
Well, I think she has. I think she's had a huge impact. It's just the question of would she have had a bigger impact? Probably. I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But I was, after I got out of that campaign with John McAfee, for those that don't know, I was John McAfee's VP running mate.
Yeah,
I ran with this maniac in 2016. I understood why anybody who runs in a major office in the Libertarian Party typically doesn't ever step foot in the Libertarian Party ever again, because it is so toxic, especially when you're that visible. Even if you're not, if you just step into any LP meeting, just look left and look right, it's gross. It's a lot of toxic people. It's not a pleasant place, but it's amplified so much by actually running for a significant position in the party. Like, all I thought I wanted to do was something cool. I thought, wow, I have an opportunity to run with McAfee. How cool is that? I can't pass this up. But what it really was like I was airdropped into the Hunger Games, and everybody had a baseball bat ready for me. I was in the way of somebody's plan and initiative, and so they're absolutely now focused on taking me out. And so that's the experience you're getting from all around you. It's like you're in a brawl with like 10 people around you trying to kick you. That's the experience of running in the LP. That's not at all what I wanted to get into. So going through that made me really negative on the LP.
Yeah.
But I've since changed, and I'm now actually positive about the LP because I do think it has a value, and it has a value like trash cans have value, toilets have value. A world without trash cans or toilets would be a very messy world, and so you need to put this trash somewhere. And wouldn't it be amazing if they invented a magnetic trash can that just magnetically attracted the trash into it by itself without having to do anything? That would be incredible. That's the LP. It magnetically attracts the most toxic people in to just fight with each other over there, and so they're removed from having to be navigated around in the rest of the liberty movement. So I think the LP is great to have. I just don't support it, and I wouldn't donate anything to it. I wouldn't spit in that direction, but I'm glad it's there.
Judd, it's interesting too, because my first experience in the liberty movement was the seminar at the Foundation for Economic Education. And one of the things that just so amazed me about that whole week was just how nice everybody was.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is something I want to be a part of. But then and I don't know. I really don't know how you fix it either. I mean, when you have that cultural rot, because, if you have a club, either the bad people drive out the good or the good people drive out the bad. And once the bad people have driven out the good, how do you get the good? I don't know how you get the good people.
You're talking about the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, that or anything. Yeah.
Well, the Libertarian Party is a small drop in the bucket of the liberty movement. So, so it's not really significant. They haven't achieved anything of significance. They're trying to drum up their meager achievements, but it's really been nothing. There's a lot of resources, time, energy spent in it, and it's honestly just. I would like to say that it's just a waste, but that's an improvement. It's actually damaging. Like, useless would be an improvement for the Libertarian Party. I wish it was useless, but it's actually harmful and damaging. It's just a place of negativity and toxicity, and there's no possible way to fix it. There's nothing you can do to fix it. If you go in there ready to fight to knock out the bad guys, you've become the monster you're trying to defeat. You can't do that. Structurally, it's going to be a toxic place. It's not possible. By its structure, people can come in and vote, and you've now got a membership club of the most toxic elements in the movement. And most people that are donating their free time to a cause want to feel somewhat productive by it. And if you just dip your toe into the LP, Libertarian Party, you'll see that this is not a good use of your free time, unless fighting with other miserable nerds is a better use of your free time. And for some of these people, it is, because they're sitting at home, I don't know, in the basement doing nothing. They can come out and fight with other nerds. That's a better use of their time. And so that's what you're dealing with. Or another way to say it is autism is frustrating.
Yeah. Well, Judd, that's one thing. A lot of people, will leave their LP, and I don't begrudge people to leave the LP as long as they're going to fight the good fight somewhere else. And there are people who go to work maybe for the Marijuana Policy Project or Gun Owners of America or some organization like that. And they all say, I feel like I'm making much more of a difference here. Cause I've never seen, I've also never been part of it's also very frustrating to be part of an organization that shoots itself in the foot in so many different ways.
Yeah. Well, if your focus now is fighting viciously for the spot of treasurer in Minnesota,
oh yeah,
then you've lost the script. You've lost the entire plot. You're not really advancing liberty. You're now just fighting over
True.
nothing, over positions of no power.
Yeah, true. That's true. I think I do think it's a whole lot worse at the national level than at the state levels and at the county levels.
I mean, look at some of these state parties are cool, some of these state parties are not, and some of them are very toxic. I don't want to say anything about New Hampshire, but
Oh God.
Even California, these state parties are not great either. National, just people are more invested in that. And who's getting invested in positions of no power like this and is willing to fight? It's almost all hostile autistics crowd. It's almost universally that. And what you've got are rapidly escalating autistic nerd battles. And if that's what you want to do in your free time, is join the rapidly escalating autistic nerd battle, then join the LP, because you're going to have plenty. You have nothing but that. If you don't want that, then there's nothing for you in the LP, and there never can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to say anymore. It's so. Judd, I do think social media and the internet's probably made it worse. But yeah, but it's hard. But it's well. Yeah, and certainly, there are other ways to go out and fight the good fights, because you're doing your.
Yeah, so let's stay positive.
You're doing your
Ayn Rand,
like that. I think there are other ways. I think that's the thing people do, eventually find other ways to do things. But Judd, I'm still glad I have that choice on the ballot too. I'm so glad that I voted for Chase Oliver. I really am, considering what was there, and I've watched these other two parties get a whole lot worse just in my own lifetime.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that politics is where libertarians go to become the monsters they hate.
Possibly.
And the LP is the manifestation of that. I think what we really need to do is, sadly, we have to enter politics to reduce politics from our life. But the LP is not as much as I want it to be, it's not a useful vehicle for that.
Well, you're going to have politics, even if you have, like a bridge club or something like that. There's always a degree of politics anytime you have,
sure,
or even organizations. But yeah, well, this has been a great way to honor Dr. Branden. I'm glad.
Yeah, well, on a positive note,
yeah,
Dr. Branden and
on a positive note, yes.
On a positive note, Nathaniel and Ayn Rand both demonstrated a more effective way,
yes,
to create change and influence people, and I would rather follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, I hope, I'm glad, and I think, Judd, the thing that I used to think back in the 90s, all these people who read Nathaniel Branden are crazy, but now I look at people like you and I said, boy, these people who love Nathaniel Branden have really done some really interesting stuff. it's funny how that perspective changes. And I really do. And that's why I wanted to do this. And I have to admit, Judd, I wanted to get you on here. You have so many great insights on things. And, you've really got, there's intelligence and there's wisdom, and you have a lot of wisdom. I don't know how much, intelligence is, going on Jeopardy and winning a lot of money, but wisdom is just knowing what to do and when to do it, making good decisions. It's, yeah.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Who's, by the way, got a comment from the Oven. Oh, that's Ovens. Ovens is coming. Yes.
Okay.
We would have loved to have had you here, Ovens, but I understand if you didn't want to come on. I got to say, Ovens is one of the few people in the Libertarian Party that I trust anymore. And by trust, I mean, if I ask her about something, she will try to give she'll try to give me fair and objective information. Yeah. I mean, if I ask 10 libertarians, hey, what's the temperature on the thermometer? 9 of them will tell me, well, I think it's hot or I think it's cold. I said, that's not what I asked you. I want you to go read the thermometer and tell me what that number is.
Yeah.
But maybe that's everybody too. But
no, but Ovens is special. She's been incredible, and she's very passionate. She cares a lot. She cares a lot about a lot of things.
Well, anyway, and of course, Ovens has been on here plenty of times too. One other person was going to come on, but he couldn't make it. And he was also on the West Coast. We ended up, it was a good panel. I appreciate everybody who came on. Thank you, Judd. I'm out. We're out. So, yeah.